morning, everyone. We are starting our panel on should every Jew make Aliyah. I will tell you that when I first looked at the poster on the board, I thought to myself, "Wow, shortest panel ever." Yes. Okay. Let's go to Seder. Like, what are we actually? What exactly is this conversation? Rebbe looked at it and commented in a chat, like, are there any non-flaming Zionists on this panel? And I note the series of Gush Rebbeim all talking about should Jew make Aliyah. That having been said, and then just to explain a little bit why this is what it is, I had a very interesting conversation. I took a long walk with my eldest son over Pesach, and one of the conversations we had was about Zionism, and we were making distinctions. It was in the conversation between political Zionism, modern Zionism, and the fact that the Torah is, I would define it as a Zionist document. You're not going to actually find among Rebbeim in this yeshiva, or many rabbis of all different stripes across Yerushalayim, a whole lot of people who are going to say, actually no, it's a bad idea religiously, Jewishly to live in Israel, because if you read Chumash, if you read Tanakh, if you read Gemara, read Torah, it's kind of pretty obvious. So where you start to get into distinctions and differences, it's really when it becomes more lamaisa. In other words, as a theoretical construct, Judaism is interested in having Jews live in Israel. There isn't really a whole lot of debate about that, and that's why if we left it at that level, this would be a very, very, very short panel. So what we're going to do today is focus a little bit more on aspects that are either lamaisa or trying to get into more of the fine points and the differences that occur on the individual level. Writ large, should every Jew make Aliyah? Yeah, I think that's pretty obvious. But what about how do I consider that? Right? What are the vagaries and the possibilities that exist within a personal context, within each person's decisions about their own life? And that's where we're going to go. So I'm going to start posing questions to our panelists, and I'll begin with Rav Noam on this first question. Do you believe that everyone should move to and live in Israel? And more importantly, what are valid reasons in your understanding to live elsewhere?
Thanks, Rav Judah. Yeah. I'm Rosh Yeshiva. I'd also begin maybe briefly with a short family story as well. As you guys know, we just had a wonderful Shabbat here with you guys. It was very special. Thank you all for making a Shabbat with us. And my daughter was here for Shabbat, as you saw. And the reason she decided to come is with her two children is because her husband's in Gaza for the umpteenth time. Because her husband's in Gaza, and she didn't want to be alone. And we spent part of the afternoon looking after her two kids, myself and my wife, so she can have a bit of a break. She's on the kids all the time by herself. My first thought was, we raised 6 kids, how do we do this? This is 2 kids, this is driving me crazy. But the second thought, of course, was, after finished thinking about myself, the second thought was, that is unbelievable, Mesirut Nefesh on my daughter's part, not just on her husband's part to protect the Jewish people, but Mesirut Nefesh on my daughter's part and on the hundreds of thousands of other reservists and their wives who go out to protect the Jewish people, because this is what we need to do. The men are fighting and the women looking after their homes and the children on their own. And I was like, this is crazy. Mesirut Nefesh. That means connecting, and we spoke about this a little bit Friday night at the Tish, connecting and feeling what it means to be part of the Jewish people. And that's living in Israel, certainly first and foremost is connecting and being with the Jewish people. Not just observing, not just from being afar, but being part of the Jewish people. As Rav Judah said, should every Jew be here? I can't even, I took the words out of my mouth. Pashut. I am quite aware there are some people think that living in Eretz Yisrael, the mitzvah Yeshiva Eretz Yisrael is a mitzvah kiyumit, and I don't think that's the correct, personally, who am I to argue with Gedolim, but I think the reason that Rambam didn't mention the mitzvah Yeshiva Eretz Yisrael is not because there's no mitzvah, it's because it's so obvious that the mitzvahs were given to be in Eretz Yisrael, the Jewish people are meant to be in Israel. Something like that. The Rambam does what the Rambam terms in his introduction to the mitzvah klali. This is something which is so obvious. You don't have to write something which is so obvious. It's a davar pashut. And Rav Zuchsin said, you don't want to be a bystander in the Jewish history, you want to be a player. And I'm not even talking about assimilation. I don't even think there's much Jewry will be left in 50 years in America. Not even because of that. And by the way, we had a Bachur made Aliyah because of that. Aiken told me once. Daniel Aiken said, If I don't make Aliyah, my grandchildren won't be Jewish. He said because of that. But I'm not even playing the assimilation card. What's going to be with your kids and your grandchildren? Pashut. Do you want to be here? Do you want to be a player? Or do you want to be a bystander in Jewish history? Your grandparents and your great-grandparents dreamt of this. So who are you to turn it down? Having said all that, and I said this very briefly, I could talk for an hour. But having said all that, is there any justification for not making Aliyah? Honestly, the go-to was no. No. You want to make more money? There's things which are more important in life. Want a more comfortable life? Okay, great. What are you living for? Honestly, having said that, there's two things I can think of that, and maybe Rebbe's can argue or disagree or suggest this. There's only two possible reasons I can think of not making, and I'll be honest with you. One reason, to be honest, is chinuch. Rav Soloveitch did not make Aliyah. And he almost single-handedly, some people say the credit the Rav and the Rebbe for rejuvenating American Orthodoxy after the war. But the Rav played a major role in that. And he did not make Aliyah. And Rav Shechter hasn't made Aliyah. And I know he wants to be here. Right? But maybe making a difference. And when we've had alumni of ours who debated this question, or Chinuch, and debated this question for years. And Notre Brownstein's making Aliyah finally in this summer. Year one Orayta who years spoke to us. I want to make Aliyah, but I'm doing important work. What do I do? I can hear that. And the second thing is family reasons. I know people who didn't make Aliyah because they have elderly parents. And then I can understand. I do understand that. You don't want, but in Nebuch, I may have Esrim. I know families that those got the elder parents. When the elder parents were nifter, they made Aliyah afterwards. I can see that. I understand that. But other than that, honestly, what? Excuse me for being blunt. What? It's more comfortable? You make a better living? Is that really what it's all about? Really? I'm gonna stop here.
So, I'm not sure this is actually the right question. I think the question is not, is there a mitzvah to make? Of course, there's a mitzvah to make Aliyah. The Gemara talks about 3 valid reasons why a person is allowed to be in Chutz La'aretz. The fact that the Gemara has to have that discussion means that it really isn't so valid to be in Chutz La'aretz. First reason is if you can't find a shidduch. Okay, go out to Midrash, go out to the court. Yeah. The second reason is because you can't learn Torah. Okay, today that's obviously ridiculous. And the third is if you can't make a parnasa, and that's equally ridiculous. And anybody who believes that it's harder to make a living, the Gemara is not talking about whether you have 3 houses or 2. The Gemara is talking about you just can't make ends meet. So clearly, there's a mitzvah to be here. The question, I think, is, why wouldn't you be here? You have to ask yourself an honest question. I have a vivid memory of being, Shana Aleph, Shana Bet in Gush, and davening one morning and getting to the piece, Bil Yerushalayim Mircha B'Rachamim Tashuv. Oh God, bring us back to Yerushalayim. And I'm still thinking about going back to Columbia. And I started asking myself, so what does that mean? Is this real? Am I just saying words, or do I live up to this? So I'm not saying it's easy. It is not an easy journey, as Rav Noam elucidated, and there are many different levels of that. But that's the question you have to ask yourself. And if the answer is because it's more comfortable there. By the way, one of the reasons for me personally, I just want to add, by the way, I think there's a difference between sharing with you what we think is an imperative and telling you what you should do. This is on you. You have to make these decisions. We can share with you what we think is valid, what we think is meaningful, and you have to decide what to do with that. But this question is something that you have to struggle with this question, And one of the reasons that I came so early, I basically stayed, is precisely because as you stay longer overseas, it becomes more difficult. My parents are 90 right now, and all 3 of their children are here. We're all here, and it's unbelievable how much we do for them. And so it should be, because they did so much for us when we were younger. I don't know, if I was living in New York now and my parents were 90, I would not be able to leave. I would not feel right leaving. So, that's something to think about in this period of time. And I want to just end with one thing. There's a lot more to say. I was in YU one year, and they invited me to speak on Yom HaZikaron. And I happened to be walking, there was a poster that was plastered on tons of bulletin boards. And this is what it read. I took one because I couldn't believe it, right? It starts with a quote from the Gemara in Ksubos. Our rabbis learned one should always live in Eretz Yisrael, even in a city whose majority is idolaters, and he should not live outside Eretz Yisrael, even in a city with a Jewish majority. You can study that sugya and Shalei Luba Choma and everything else that's there. And this is the poster. The following Rosh Yeshiva strongly urge every Jew to seriously consider making Aliyah. I'm going to read that again. The following Rosh Yeshiva strongly urge every Jew to seriously consider making Aliyah. In other words, not all the Rosh Yeshiva, again, that's my interpretation, but some of us think you should strongly consider making Aliyah. I was trying to imagine myself how this would look if we substituted with another mitzvah. The following Rosh Yeshiva strongly urge people to seriously consider wearing tefillin in the morning. We believe that a massive return to our eternal homeland will contribute greatly to an alleviation of all demographic, economic, and religious. This is part of the problem, is that we think this is up for discussion. This is not up for discussion. The Lubavitcher Rebbe of Moshe Feinstein, of Aaron Kotler, of Soloveitchik, they didn't make Aliyah. There are obviously good reasons to be in Chutz La'aretz. If you think you can be a Rav Soloveitchik, Rav Lichtenstein made Aliyah. Rav Vital came to Israel. Rav Riskin left an unbelievable career. I challenge you to find a rabbi who could have accomplished more in education than Rav Riskin. He came here to help build a small city. He sat in the middle of the Rimon in the shul. He didn't even sit in front. There was an election whether he would be elected the rabbi of Efrat. There were maybe 80 families when he came in the summer of 83. He landed on a kibbutz and just taught in the kibbutz and then came to, and look what he built. Dozens of institutions. There is plenty of work to do here educationally, believe me. So if I think the challenge of this dialogue is, am I being honest with myself? Food for thought.
I'd like to begin from a slightly different angle, which is historically, many great rabbis did not make Aliyah. And just to understand what they were going through, what they were feeling, where their minds were at, and I think we can begin unpacking that with a very famous machlokas, Rashi, Ramban. Right? The Ramban counts the mitzvah of Yeshivat Orayta as a mitzvah d'oraisa, right? And there, in his comments, he says, and I am arguing with Rashi, who takes that same pasuk and has a different comment. What does Rashi say? According to the Ramban, you can read Rashi differently, but according to the Ramban, Rashi believes it's not a mitzvah, it's a zchus. And we see every single day in Kriyas Shema that if you are terrible enough, if we are terrible enough, Hashem will kick us out of the land. Maybe making Aliyah is not a mitzvah you choose. Maybe it's a reality that you have an opportunity to do if you are zocha. If Hashem chooses you and allows you into His land, then you can be here. And if He doesn't, you can't. Now don't get me wrong. It doesn't mean the greater people make Aliyah and the lesser people don't. Because who didn't make Aliyah even though he was dying, literally, to get into the land? Moshe Rabbeinu, right? The greatest person to ever live. Wanted so much to make Aliyah, and Hashem said no, and he couldn't come in. And that was it. And so sometimes the doors of this land are closed. Both the Gra and the Chafetz Chaim began their Aliyah journeys and died on the way. Again, we're not judging them, we're not saying they're less. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't make it. But Hashem sometimes says no. Again, we paskin, you go on the Turi Karta website. They say, do not think we are undermining the mitzvah d'oraisa of Yeshivat Orayta. Of course, that's a mitzvah. We paskin in Shulchan Aruch, in Pesach, anyone who wants to see. It's black and white. Everyone agrees. Everyone. There is a mitzvah to live in the land of Israel. I think the real understanding of Jewish history is that door wasn't open. But now the door is. And if in our generation, Jews are apathetic about Aliyah, they're like, I don't know, what is a good land? You know, in my opinion, New York sounds great. In Hashem's opinion, the Eretz HaTova is Eretz Yisrael. I don't know, where am I going? What am I doing? And I think it all comes down to Ratzon. And I was thinking about all these ideas, and I knew this panel was going to be today. On Wednesday last week, a friend of mine sent me a message. And I hadn't spoken to him in a long time. His name is Benj Harris, from Manchester. And in 2012, we were all in a big group of guys, 15 of us from Yeshivat Orayta going to the army. And he was like taller than me, stronger than me, and he was getting ready, working out, all the breaks the whole year. And then 2 weeks before the Giyus, someone jumps on his back, and he twists his ankle, and he's like been dreaming about being the best combat soldier ever. And that door closes to him. He is like a torn ligament. He is not going to be able to join us. And some people in that situation become jobnikim, they do other jobs. He decides, if I can't do what I want to do, I'm going back to Manchester. And he goes, he's a great guy, he works for Asian Manchester. And I thought, I knew we spent a whole bunch of time together in yeshiva. I thought, it's sad, he's kind of given up on the whole dream. 2 years ago, he messages me saying, hey, I'm making Aliyah. That's it, we've decided, he's now married with 2 kids. That's it, we've decided, I'm coming back. Last week he messages me, hey Vinny, I have another question, but just wanted to let you know, I did Shlav Bet. Shlav Bet is like for older married guys to join Miluim. But I couldn't just join the Rabbanut like all the other guys and like bury people. I can't, I can't do that. So I called up a friend of mine who's a Magad in a certain unit, and he pulled me in, and I did a Hummer course, and so for the last 2 months I've been driving in and out of Gaza, supplying the unit. I was like, all right, Benj, you did it. You made it back. It was a full circle, 13 years later, and I've seen it again and again. Guys that really, really want it, right? They have this Moshe Rabbeinu desire to be here, to be part of Jewish history, to be part of building their nation. They want it. And sometimes, the easiest time to make Aliyah is right now. That's obvious, right? To everyone in this room. The easiest time is right now. But sometimes that door is closed to people. For whatever reason, their parents don't support it, and the university, and a million different things. If you really, really want it, I think that's a lot of what we do in yeshiva. We build rotzon. We build deep desires. If you really, really want it, I think the doors will open up for you in a year, 2 years. Easiest time is right now, but things do turn around. A lot of our guys go to the army with someone I know as Harrison Khan, right? He's running the TVA, he has the program now. Right? His parents made him go to YU for 2 semesters. They said, you'll come back, you'll be here, you'll become normal again, you'll forget about all the craziness, leave it alone. And he went, and he came back. Now he's running as the program. and I see it again and again. The people that really, really want it, in this generation, they make it. Thank you.
ברשות הראש ישיבה, רמי. I'm going to start with, and I don't think I'm going to say what you think I'm going to say. So I'm just going to start with the following. During the British Mandate, when the British Mandate is set out, the British allowed Jews to come live in Eretz Israel, British mandated Palestine, but it was based on a quota. Every country in Europe had a quota. So that if you were trying to make Aliyah, or you wanted to come and live here, let's say from Romania, there were 1,000 Jews a year allowed in from Romania. Once they filled up that quota, they wouldn't allow in any Jews from Romania. Same thing was with Bulgaria, same thing with every country across Europe and across the world. But if they filled up the quota in one country, they would allow in people from other countries. That's how it worked. So there was a group of Jews who their country had filled the quota. There were about 10 or 12 of them. They were married, they were families, and they were desperate to make Aliyah. But the quota was full. But they had the following option. They could find is a nice way of putting it, they could source birth certificates from another country, which would, of course, not be authentic. So they asked the Shaila, what do we do? Are you allowed to do that? Mutar? We're going to be dishonest about this. We're going to lie, but we want to make Aliyah. Are you allowed to lie, to be dishonest, to do something, even if it's an unfair rule? But are you allowed to do that? So who do they ask? They asked Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, who was one of the great poskim in Yerushalayim, parallel to Maran Harav Kook, at the same time. And he says to them, absolutely not. That's dishonest. It's a lie. You shouldn't be making Aliyah under these circumstances. A Ben Torah shouldn't be thinking that way. Don't do it. Then they said to him, okay, but we're also able to source birth certificates from Eretz Israel. To say that we were all born here, and for some reason we went to Europe, and now we want to return. Can we do that? This, he said, yeah, that you can do. They said, what? He said, yeah, this you can do. They said, how does that work? We're not allowed to do it with some other country, but it's the same thing. It's dishonest. We're going to be sourcing a non-authentic birth certificate. It's not real. It's a forgery. How are you allowed to do that? He said, because it is real and it's not a forgery. He said, I'll prove it to you. It's a Gemara in Ketuvos. The Pasuk in Tehillim says explicitly. The Pasuk in Tehillim says, Ish va'ish yulad ba. It says that every person regarding Tzion, Zion, man, ish va'ish, a man and a man is born there. So the Gemara asks, why is there a repetition in the Pasuk? Ish va'ish. It should say Ish asher yulad ba. A person that was born there. That person yearns for Zion. Why does it say Ish va'ish? That Zion ya'amel, Tzion ya'amel, to Ish va'ish, towards a person and a person. The Gemara in Ketuvos learns, Echad hanolad ba, it is the same regarding one that is physically born there, ve'echad hamitzapeh lirota, and the person that yearns to see it, yearns towards it. It's their game, it's their goal, but they're not there yet. It's as if they're born there, because the reality is that every single Jew is born in Eretz Israel. Maybe not physically, but spiritually. Not only as an Am, as a people, but as individuals. I think it was Shai Agnon. Shai Agnon was an Israeli author who won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1966. And in his acceptance speech, he speaks about being born in Yerushalayim. He wasn't. He was born in Buchac in Romania. But he was born in Yerushalayim. And one of the journalists came to him and said, Mr. Agnon, you were not born in Yerushalayim. You were not born in Israel. You were born in Buchac in Romania. He said, no, my body was born in Buchac in Romania. I was born here in Eretz Israel. And having said that, every Jew is born here. Aval. I think there's a massive distinction and difference between our national yearning, that every day we daven v'techezena einenu v'rachem uvnei Yerushalayim, we daven towards Yerushalayim. Everything about our life, religious life, is aiming and yearning towards Tzion, sheyibaneh v'yikonen, to be rebuilt and be restored. But then there's also a personal level. Can you? Is it possible? It could be that you yearn to, it could be that you want to, but it's not always that practical. I know. We made Aliyah. Everybody here made Aliyah. There's a lot of things to grapple with. Culture. It's a completely different culture. You have to be aware of that. And the younger that you come, the earlier that you come, the easier it is. Because you grow, you develop, you become used to it. But there's a different culture. It's a different way. It's different people. It's a convergence of different peoples coming together. It's true, we're one nation, one people. But the way that things are done are very different. You can get used to it. It's like you speak to Rav Bini, it's like second nature thing. But you speak to people that make Aliyah recently, it's really hard for them. It's not that it's not a struggle. But the question is it a struggle that is worthwhile? Is it a struggle that pays off? L'aniyut dati, in my opinion, it is the one struggle in your life that you will never ever regret. Coming to Eretz Yisrael, being a part of the unfolding history and the destiny of the Jewish people, building a family here, raising your children here, walking the Holy Land, every 4 steps is a mitzvah. Just sensing and feeling and smelling and being a part of what is unfolding. The generations before us could not and would not have dreamt of. That's something that is an opportunity that if you decide to do, looking back, I don't think that you'll ever regret it.
All 4 panelists have definitely certified their bona fides as Zionists. Okay. But I want to use moderator's prerogative to push a little bit, because what I took away from some of the comments is, okay, if you're in chinuch and you're really needed, if you have a severe family issue which you should avoid before your parents are 90 and they're there and you're here, what about? And this question has 2 parts, and if anyone, if you don't care to comment, you don't care to comment, but if you have something to say, what about the following 2 possibilities? Number 1, what if you have let's say a career path, a calling that doesn't work out so well? Since you were a little kid, you've been interested in American constitutional law. You're interested in the American political system. I'm picking on the U.S., but it could be that something about your career is not a career that works out particularly well in Israel. Sure, you could be a different kind of doctor, a different kind of this, but that's what's calling you, and that's not really so available. Alternatively, and this is part B. Part A is if you have something else that you can imagine would be beyond being in the larger picture, chinuch, or specifically family. Is there anything else you can think of? Second is, what about comfort? In other words, what if your spouse, say, listen, I have no professional reason, no particular family reason. I love visiting Israel. It is my favorite place to be for Sukkot. But I'm just not so comfortable. My Hebrew's not so great. I really enjoy the community that I'm in. And I'm picking on a little bit on your final comment, Chaim, that you said it's the decision you'll never regret. People have made what?
Long term.
Long term, there are people who have made Aliyah and gone back.
I know.
So looking at that, considering can you think of any other concerns, career, calling, something about what it is that you're contributing in life that haven't yet been mentioned that might be a significant obstacle? And B, what do you think of somebody who says, I love it in concept, I'm just really not particularly happy and comfortable?
Can I start? We start with this side. ברשות ראשי הישיבה, very important and dignified and significant moderator. What I had in mind when I said that I'm fully aware that there are people who make Aliyah. This is not a simple issue. There's a rov in Kehilot and Chutz La'aretz for a long period of time. I was often consulted regarding making an Aliyah. It's not an easy decision. There are families that it's not right for them. But it needs to be entered into b'koved rosh. Very carefully thought through, chinuch, where we're going to go, how we're going to do this. It's not something that's just done. When you're young, you can maybe do it as a youngster. It's much easier. But once you're married, you have family, it's much more complex. And yes, there are people that do come, and it's not right for them. They struggle and they just can't. And I've seen it a lot, and I have no judgment to make in that regard. They came, they tried. What I'm talking about is the people that came, tried, struggled, often every day, on numerous levels, in numerous ways, parnosa, emotionally, psychologically, chinuch-wise, parnosa, on every level. It's so engaging the culture, settling in, but eventually they made it through. They look back and they don't regret it. They look back and they don't say, "Oh, I wish I would have gone back to live in Chutz La'aretz." It could be that exists. I think it's very rare. But when people do give up and they do go back, it happens. En malasot, and I have no judgment to make in that regard. People have to make a decision on their own, and things can be very difficult. And I don't begrudge anybody who has encountered such a situation. So I just wanted to clarify that point.
I'm reminded of a sudden pshat in a pasuk. It goes, "Uvau ha'ovdim be'eretz Ashur, v'hanidachim be'eretz Mitzrayim." So I can't remember who said this to me, but it was a good pshat. It stuck with me. Who is avud? Right? Uvau ha'ovdim be'eretz Ashur. There are people lost in Ashur, and nidachim be'eretz Mitzrayim. You can be avud in Ashur. Ashur milashon, ashirut, wealth. You can be lost in luxury and comforts. And I mean this sincerely.
Who says this, Pshat?
I feel sorry.
Because you know the Ashirut is with an ayin.
Right. Either way. No, you'll see. No, you can bring out the Makoros for this, but it's a good way to remember. It's an asmachta. It's not a... Okay. You can be lost. No, the Soloveitchik, the Kuzari, they all say the same idea. You can... I truly feel sorry for some of my friends that I grew up with in England that have the inability of not even lowering their standards, changing their standards, changing what they're used to such an extreme level that they cannot come here. And maybe those are the people, again, maybe it's not even their free will choice. I don't know. Maybe Hashem will judge them, right? But I truly feel sorry for people who are stuck because they can't change and they're used to what they're used to, and they can't. And maybe, hypothetically, there are people that just can't. They are lost in ashirut, in their comforts. But in the bracha that we say, we don't mention that first part. We just say, Baruch atah Hashem, mekabetz nidachei amo Yisrael. I think part of what you need to make Aliyah is to feel sorry for yourself that you're stuck in Chutz La'aretz. You have to feel sad that, I wish, not even I don't like the place that I'm in, but I wish I was there. And if we can feel nidachim, then we say the bracha every single day, 3 times a day. Baruch atah Hashem, mekabetz nidachei amo Yisrael. If we can feel suppressed and dejected and rejected a little bit, because Hashem has not opened up that door for us yet, because we think it's impossible right now, hence Hashem has closed that door to us, hopefully temporarily, then when the doors do open, we'll run right through.
Look, it seems to me the root of both these questions. What if I have a profession that just doesn't fit here? What if I'm not comfortable? Can I learn Hebrew? It seems the root of these two issues is, what if it's difficult? I don't know how to say this nicely, so I'm going to take off the gloves. You have to separate the klal from the prat. On the one hand, every individual is an individual, and a person, I remember longer story, but I remember once a boy who was really thinking about going to the army, and I actually did not think it was a good idea for him to go to the army. This is actually long before Orayta. I really thought the army would break him, and I figured out a way to get him to realize that, sort of manipulative, because I really thought the army was. But I wouldn't be embarrassed about it, right? But it's not for everybody. It's not for everybody. You know, we had a student who really wanted gung ho. He went to Golani, and it almost broke him. And he ended up having to leave the army. But a year and a half later, he came back and excelled. You know, he lives here now. I'm not saying that there's never a case where an individual might be better off this way or the other. But when you look at the general question, like, okay, so grow up. So not everything is easy. We, and I think this includes us, we are a spoiled generation. I listened to a podcast from Hirsch Goldberg's mother, who lost her son in the most horrible way. And in the middle of the podcast, she says, you know, I have to remember, we are blessed. Like she's blessed, like 100 years ago, losing one child, that was just a given. She has a wonderful family. She lives in Yerushalayim, in a state of Israel. She's surrounded by love. Of course it's difficult, and of course it's painful, but we're blessed. There was a boy here who wanted to become a pilot. It is almost impossible to become a pilot here, unless you go to the Air Force. I'm talking about if you want to be an airline pilot. Unless you go to the Air Force, it's an old boys club, and you get in, and that's almost impossible. And if you do get in, to actually graduate the course. But he wants to be a pilot, that's what he wants to be. So he's going to be in America, and he's going to study pilot school and engineering, and maybe he'll do great things. Right? So I don't judge an individual. But, you know, I think I would have been a good lawyer. I just don't think a Jew belongs in Chutz La'aretz. That's not what we were created for. That's not our mission. And the second thing I want to say is, you have to be honest with yourself. Is it about me, or is it about something bigger than me? Right? So it seems to me, and I'm not judging individuals, I'm just looking at the trend. If a boy's going back to college, and he's pushing himself in what's considered a good school, which I would debate today, but we could go there also, and he's going to get the great job. First he's going to get the internship after his sophomore year, then he's going to get the grunt, 100 hours a week for after senior year. Then, he's going to get the great job. And what's the goal? Sky's the limit. He's going to earn $600,000 a year, then he's going to learn $1 million. Why? That's what's important, like really. And I want to finish with this. There will come a time, you're at a transition point, and maybe it'll come later in your life, where you have to choose between your past and your future. Right? I was lucky enough that, and it's fortune. It's nothing to do with me. My parents ended up making Aliyah. My in-laws made Aliyah. I think I had a little to do with that, but okay, so it's easy. I don't know if it would be so easy if my parents lived there. I have friends who live in Israel and make Aliyah. They're the only sibling here. It's really, really hard. Rav Judah can talk about this. It's family in America. It's a very hard thing. That being said, right, there will come a day when you sit with your kids, and it's not something they say. It's the way they look at you. It's the understanding that you gave them a role model to look up to. One day your kid will wake up and he'll say, my dad, he went to Harvard, and he got a great job, and he earns a fortune. If that's what you want your kid to say about you, if that's the most important thing, then that's the path. I think there are more important things than that. At least to struggle with it. You don't have to clap, by the way.
Yeah. So, Judah asked two questions, as Rabbi noted, are connected, of course. The first one was parnas issues, the other one was comfort issues. I've been hoarse for months. I'm trying my best. So, the answer to both truly is that you're making a choice. And you have to, life, every single day, we make choices. Life is about making choices. And a choice is between two different things that are significant, that may really make a difference. If you do A, you're not doing B. If you're doing B, you're not doing A, which are meaningful. That's what a choice is. If someone says to you, do you want the schnitzel or the chicken? That's not a choice. Because you take both anyway. The question is which first. But at the end of the day, it's not really a choice because, come on, it doesn't make a difference, does it, really, at the end of the day? Yeah, but making Aliyah or not, that makes a difference. That makes a big difference. Rebbe just talked about what your family is going to be like. Yes. What's going to be important to your kids? That's important. Are you be running around trying to make your kids in high school? What values will they think is important? Making money, going to movies. I'm not saying everybody's like that in America, but it could be. You guys know better than me. Or is it maybe volunteering, running around to help chayalim? And you look at that. And that's what I see my kids doing in Israel. As some examples. So you're making a choice. We all make choices. Which parnas you're going to be is a choice. Where you're going to live in a choice, if it's in America or in Israel, that's a choice. So another choice is being in Israel and not being able to do your dream job of being that particular type of lawyer, whatever it is. Right. I'm not making light of that. But I don't think you're going to starve here. You could still be a lawyer. And by the way, I know people who work in American law in Israel. It's not impossible. As an example, so you're making a choice, and you have to decide what's important to you. And if it's important enough, then you say, I'm not going to do that. Same thing with comfort. It drives me crazy. And again, it came up from Friday night. That people view, you mentioned comfort. It's comfortable, I'll come here for Sukkot. Yeah, it drives me crazy that people think Israel's a place to have a holiday home, on Pesach and Sukkot, and that's where they come. On Shabbat, I mentioned all those fancy apartments in Mamila that are empty the whole year round, but they fill up a Pesach and Shabbat with all the rich Americans. Excuse me. If anybody has one here and I've offended you, I apologize.
If you have one here, I want to know because I'm here all year.
Yeah, I don't really apologize. But, what is this? That's exactly the point. What's important to you? And it goes back to connecting to the Jewish people. Sitting in a base medrash, and I saw this in London, people sitting in a base medrash in Babakama, being disconnected from the Jewish people. I'm sorry, that's not what Kadosh Baruch Hu wants us. Barurli is not what Kadosh Baruch Hu wants us. So yes, so you might have a nice big house in London, a nice house anywhere, and you might build any Babakama base medrash. I'm sorry, that's not what Kadosh Baruch Hu wants us to work for. At the end of the day, yes, you make a choice, and maybe you're not going to have such a fancy house, but believe me, you can have a nice house here. Or an apartment or room, depending where you live. Usually it's expensive. So that's my response to Rav Judah's questions. And since I'm here, I just want to say, Rabbini, actually, this Rabbini here, I disagree with just several points you made before, but the one I just want to say right now is that what the most urgent to address, you mentioned Tokadei, and I think Rabbini might have agreed as well, I'm not sure. But I'm not, he said that it's the easiest thing to make Aliyah right now. I'll be honest with you. People have heard me speak about living in Eretz Yisrael now. And I think the most important thing that anybody can do for yourselves, for your families, and Jewish people is make Aliyah. Going to the army, I think it's great. I think it's important. It's not the most important thing. I'm not going to discourage someone going to the army. I'm not going to. I think it's amazing. We have Baruch Hashem. We have plenty of Orayta Bachars who have gone to the army and have fought in Israel's wars, and they're unbelievable stuff. But you weren't raised to do that. You weren't raised from day one. In Israel, yes. And you don't gain you weren't given anything by the government. If you're given by the government, you have to give back, and I'm not going to go there and down that path right now. You weren't given that. You weren't given by the government, and I understand. If you go to the army, I think it's amazing. But you weren't raised with that, then there was no expectation. When there is expectation, as far as I'm concerned, to make Aliyah at some point. When you make Aliyah, that's up to you. I've seen people make Aliyah at this age. I'm not saying it's always easy, because if you don't have a support, family support, I don't know. I've seen people make Aliyah at your age, and not always so easy. If you want to make Aliyah right now, do tzava, or we have the right to Bachars who made Aliyah without doing tzava, but they went to do college on a visa. That's also sababa, right? And the idea is that they'll be here. You need to make Aliyah zebaru to me. At one point, ani lo yodea. That's up to you. This year, after college, you want to get married, work a little bit, make $100,000, $200,000 to have something. I know that. You have to have a plan. Aliyah has to be on your radar. Aliyah, unfortunately, isn't on too many Jews. It's not on the radar in America. Like I said before, they're happy with the communities. They're involved in chesed. It's all very nice. They got this medrash. Very nice. It's not on the radar. They think they're fine. Aliyah does have to be on your radar. When? Whether it's now or after college, which I understand you want to go back, like you have family, It might be easier to do college there than here. And lo yedema. And again, if Rebbe disagrees with me, I'm happy to hear. It's got to be on your radar. Now, in 4 years after I get married, lo yedema, it's got to be on your radar. Dafka now, and lo yedema. That's what I have to say about that.
I'm going to take moderated privilege to push back a little bit, offer my own opinion, and then we're going to move on to speed round. 3 questions, 90 seconds each. So I would add in that all things being equal, I think it's very easy and appropriate to say all things being equal. So yeah, choose to be here. All things are usually not equal. And so for a lot of history, I think there were people who would have loved to be in Israel, but to get here would have meant a journey that they might die on the journey, or the chinuch options that would have been there for their family would be not something that is even remotely close to what they had in their home country or the country of origin, not ultimate origin, but recent origin. It's a great tshuva. I would like to see that. And so on and so forth. Nowadays, as somebody who made Aliyah, one of the advantages was, okay, we had really, really good chinuch in California. And I figured we're also going to really, really good chinuch here. So that became equal, maybe even better here. So great, that's a step up. Other areas of life, okay, in this area, it's not a huge leap, or it's even an upgrade, so on and so forth. But I don't know that it actually works out that way in all aspects. The reason I was particularly asking about comfort, career, which are not the same thing, is that I think that one of the hardest things to do in life is to be truly, deeply self-honest. And it works both ways. Sometimes we deal with cognitive dissonance by excusing to ourselves and making up a great argument and wonderful lumdus as to why what I'm doing is really the best way. And in fact, so a person can, go to university in the States, for example, start a career, and then find a way to explain why really, really I can't. And that is one way that this can go. But it can also go the other way. Sometimes people tell themselves, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. And it's coming at a tremendous personal price. So I'm specifically, it's really all the panelists, but you just spoke most recently with Noam. So I agree with you. I think that in many respects, okay, you're going to be a lawyer in this field, so you might take on that field. And for many a person, that might actually be more or less equivalent. The little tiny downgrade you take by taking this job over that job is negligible in the big picture. But I think that there are cases where a person's very specific interest, skill set, talent really speaks to, no, this is, for me, such a big, big deal in life that I'm not sure I can give that up. Alternatively, that I want to say, I can do it. I just need to overcome the discomfort, and I'm going to make it happen with sheer will and a little dose of Navardic. I'm going to move, and that'll be that. And I think for many people that's the case, and many people don't try hard enough. But I think there are also people who sometimes will push and push and push and not necessarily pay attention to the toll that it's taking on them. And so it's really, really hard to get to that kind of self-honesty to say, okay, all things being equal, what's the right move here? Because it's really hard to get to that. But I think that it's worthwhile to sit and try to really drill down with very intense clarity to, okay, so what is this really going to be like for me? Is this really a good move? In many, many cases, I think yes. But I'm not personally prepared to say, yeah, you know what? It's fine. You'll get something else. Because for some people, a career is income. And for some people, a career is a very deep part of self-expression that I'm not so sure is always so easy. For some people, discomfort is manageable. For some people, the discomfort is really more than. So I'm putting that out there. That's my own opinion. Okay, I'll leave it there. We're going to go. I'm fond of noting that there are 2 kinds of people in this world. There are people who believe that life goes in a straight line as you anticipate, and there are people over age 16. So I'm going to turn to the panelists to ask the question, and we'll do this quickly because we have several rounds of speed round. If you could share with the beloved Chevra, the esteemed Chevra, why you moved here, and did things work out as you expected? Did you find the things you were looking for? How did it turn out?
Give us an order.
Let's start with you, Rebbe. Shoot the Rosh Hashiva.
I moved here because I felt that's what Judaism asked of me. I moved here because my role models taught me that this is where we belong. It absolutely worked out. There were bumps in the road, but yeah, absolutely. And if you want more parish on that, you can reach out to me anytime.
I came because that is what, I guess it was, my parents' fault. They brought me up that way. Did things work out? I like to quote the pasuk of Lo ke'eretz Mitzrayim hi. It's not like the land of Egypt. The land of Egypt has a Nile that rises and it's pretty consistent, everything's fine. And here you have to look up to heaven. And there is a little bit of a emunah. I think you might say, this land is really good for building your emunah. Because there are twists and turns and things don't work out and there are surprises along the way. Baruch Hashem, we're doing okay. Yeah, for details, feel free to catch me.
We'll say that shortly because we're short on time. Just generally, I just want to share with you a personal, we've got 90 seconds, just a personal feeling. We went to Chutz La'aretz to be a rabbi, to engage in chinuch, to build a community. That was the dream. There wasn't a day that went by that I didn't yearn to be in Israel. It wasn't a day that I didn't turn around to my wife and say, I think maybe we made a mistake. And it took 22 years to come to the conclusion that we need to come back. And then we just upped and came back. And the moment we landed, it was like, this is where we belong. I'm not sure everybody feels that way. But I know that that's how I felt. And I know that it wasn't a day that went by that there wasn't a part of me that was missing. And if you want to discuss that in more detail, you're welcome to.
I made Aliyah when I was 8. My parents made Aliyah. Wasn't a decision I made. I love it here. Never will live anywhere else in the world. I love to travel. If anyone wants to, pay for my ticket somewhere, then check out Europe a little bit. I love to travel, see the world. But I would never live anywhere else. I grew up here. Thank God. And will, please God, never live anywhere else.
Put myself on this one. I moved here personally. The way I always said it, which my wife laughs at because we're different people, is I always said my neshama needed to go home. I was not particularly interested in Israeli culture. I don't like Israeli food. I wasn't comfortable. It was about this patch of land, and something clicked when I came here the first time at age 16. I just said there was something that relaxed right here. It just felt like home. In a way that, although I love California, I felt the entire, so many years that I was living on a great business trip. Because when you're on a business trip, you maybe stay in a hotel that's nicer than your home, you drink the finest wines at the greatest restaurants, and it's all better than what you'd have at home, but you're living out of a suitcase. And I was always felt somehow that I was living out of a suitcase, even though culture, it didn't work for me that way. For my wife, it was completely different. It had everything to do with peoplehood and children's education. And I'd say, my neshama needs to go home. And she'd say, what does that even mean? I'd say, it's okay. Well, you don't have to understand it. It's fine. We're on the same track. I would say that it worked out far better than I anticipated. I anticipated going from the best job in the world to frankly, a reasonable job. Reasonable. Turned out excellently, far better than I anticipated, but I thought that was the sort of downgrade I was accepting. I have found myself far more comfortable over the years and enjoying being around Israelis and the culture here, and I'm still on some level always going to be an immigrant. My grandfather was also always an immigrant, except he was always an immigrant in America, and it was going to be temporary, and I'm an immigrant, and my grandchildren, it'll be different, God willing. But it has turned out a whole lot better, and a lot of things that were difficult in the beginning turned out either somewhat or much better. A few things were harder than anticipated, just to put out there. I think that my children's first years in Israel were harder than I thought they were going to be. We did a lot of work to get them ready. It was not all strawberries and cream easy. There were bumps along the way, for sure. I will end this part just by sharing that we used to come in the summers to bring our kids to Israel so that they would come to Neve Daniel, meet other children, spend time, and know, this is where you're going to go. It's not, totally foreign. You're taking me out of school and you're bringing me to a new place. No, you're going to meet other kids. You're going to see the places. You're going to see, everything so that you'll be ready for it. And one morning, Nomi told me that she was up with jet lag, and at 3 a.m, she had called an American 800 number for customer service. And the person picked up on the other end and said, hello, can I help you? And nobody said, you already did. That's it. I just need somebody to say, can I help you? I feel much better now. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next question.
I feel I have to do this because Rav Blau is in
Please.
here, but I just want to point out.
I went over.
You spoke longer than Rav Noam and Rav Chaim combined.
That's true. I didn't answer the first two questions. Now, we go on. Next one about timing. This is whichever panel, not everyone has to speak to it. Can you offer any insights about making Aliyah before college versus right after college versus into one's career? Thoughts about times of life.
Noam's pushed back against me. No, the reason why
Middle here.
the reason why I said what I said is exactly because of what Rav Judah just said. When you make Aliyah, when you're single, before college, before you get married, so it's just you. You're not responsible for your wife, and you're not responsible for your kids. And when you make Aliyah, and you are responsible for other people, like when you make Aliyah and you're 18, you're probably not even paying rent, right? You go into some program that takes care of you. You join Machal, or even if you don't go to the army, you'll be taken care of as a single guy, 18, 19, 20. There are programs that will take care of you. There is no such program for married people with kids. And when you make Aliyah with a wife and kids, so you have to pay rent the first month, and it's not going to be 1,000 shekel, right? And you have to get kids into schools, and everyone's emotions have to be balanced, and it's all abnormal for everyone. That is far, again, there might be exceptions to the rule. That is far more complicated than, I'm a single guy, 18, should I go to the army? Should I go to Machon Lev?
So, again, Birshut. I must say that, when I was a really young yeshiva bocher, I wanted to get married. And I'm saying this because I think that the lesson is relevant to you. So I went to see, it's the Yortzeit of Arava in Liechtenstein, 10 years, Rabbi v'mori, Rabbeinu v'moreinu. And I went to speak to the Rosh Yeshiva, and he looked at me like, how old are you? And I said, I'm 19. I wasn't even 19 yet. He said to me, I don't know, I don't quite know what to tell you, but Rav Amital will. So I went to see Rav Amital, and Rav Amital told me the following thing, and I'm making it very short. He said to me, the best time to get married is when you're young, if you have who to marry. Why? Because you'll grow and develop together. You'll change together. You'll mature together. And it's the same thing with making Aliyah. The younger that you do it, the easier and the better it is. You grow, you mature, you develop, you become a part of Israeli society. When you marry in Israel. When your children are born, they're born in Israel. As time goes on, the later it gets, the more misubal it is, the more complex it is. There's different calculations, just like Rav Bini, young Rav Bini said.
Well then.
I didn't mean it that way. I meant
The other Rav Bini.
The other Rav Bini.
Oh, we get it. Okay.
It becomes much more complicated. But you get inspired. I was inspired by a young Rav Bini when I was your age. And I went to his sikha. And he spoke about making Aliyah, and that's one of the things that really inspired me. But you've got a Rosh Yeshiva like that. So that should be something that's really ingrained in a deep part of your soul by now, B'ezrat Hashem.
So regarding post-college and pre-college, I would just say two things. First of all, both are possible. Both are legitimate. And there are pros and cons to both. That's a longer discussion, but I will tell you two things. The first is, there are two reasons you go to college. Ostensibly, you go to college to gain an education. I'm not sure that's why most people go to college. I'm putting aside the third reason, which is to get the degree, which is all important to get the job, because I don't think that's the reason to go to college. But you go to college to be educated. But there is a second reason you go to college, the way the secular college system works for sure, but I think YU as well, and that is to build a network. Okay, college gives you a network. There's a reason that graduates from certain colleges keep their college emails. It's part of their network. Well, if you want to make Aliyah, and you want to come to Israel, college is one of the ways you build your network, right? The difference between America and Israel is that Israel has a second system to build a network, and that's the army. Now, if you come to Israel and you want to make Aliyah, going to college before the army is very difficult, because you're younger than everybody else. It's a challenging thing. There are boys who do it. There are Orayta boys who do it. They go to IDC, whatever. But there are challenges to that, so that needs to be thought out, right? On the other hand, if you go to America and you go to college and you come here to go to the Army, there are pros and cons to that. It's very, very difficult after you've done the Army, especially if you're Kravi, to sit down and go to college. But it's very, very difficult after college to go back to being commanded by 19-year-olds, and that's a longer discussion, but there are pros and cons. But I think building a network is important. You build the network in America.
No, I'm not sorry, beer. I'm not cholik, Rabbeinu. I'm not saying there's the advantages and disadvantages. Like I said before, you make choices. There's always advantages and disadvantages to all the choices. You mentioned some advantages in making Aliyah when you're young. Nachon. And if a person doesn't have a support system, I've seen people fail. One could argue that if you come with a wife already, that's your support system. So I'm saying Lachan, both work.
As less than 90 seconds, Hayang Rav Chaim.
By the way, I didn't say old, I said younger.
These are my seconds. As somebody who came mid-career, I would say I agree with every panelist. It is not a simple thing. The hardest part is not actually at least for me, it's not necessarily the career transition. It's the fact that once you're doing something, you keep putting down roots. So to all those who said that, if you do it before college, then you just put down your roots here. That doesn't work for everyone. I see more and more guys who are coming after college. That surprises me because it used to be like, you say you're going to come after college, yeah, call me in 20 years, you're not coming. But it's not actually the case anymore. I had a bunch of alumni at my house for Shabbos, including guys who came after college. It's become more and more of a thing. This is, I think, generational. Coming in a career, it is possible. The old piece of like, I'm just going to make X amount of money. So the danger is not that you're not going to make that money and not come. It's that you keep moving the goalpost. Right? Like, I made this, well, if it's just a little more, just another year, just another year. It's possible. I did it. I know other people who did it. It's challenging. Moving on to the last question, and then we're going to go to questions from the group, which is, if you could offer any tips for successful Aliyah.
Okay. 3 tips. Tip number 1: learn Hebrew. If you're in America, right, and you're in college setting, take a course. Find something online and work on Hebrew. There's no doubt that the better your Hebrew when you finish college and come to Israel, if you're going back to college, the better off you are. And if you're here and you're staying Shana Bet or whatever it might be, so in order to avoid, challenges when you get to the Army of Hebrew, the more Hebrew you study, the better. There are a lot of ways to do that. Opan, having a Hebrew chavruta, etc., etc. Get a girlfriend who only speaks Hebrew, whatever it is, right? That's number 1. Number 2, and I can't understate this. Have chachamim in your life, because when you consider this type of question, a lot of it depends on who you are and what you're looking for, and what your strengths are, and what your weaknesses are, and your family situation and your social situation. So it might be that in the grand vision, all of us standing up here on the panel would agree you should make Aliyah. But it might be for you specifically that if you asked me, I would say, you know what, I think you should actually go to college in America. You'll be better off there. Come afterwards. Here's what you can do, right? And the last thing I want to say is, you nebuch, lo aleinu, rachmana litzlan, go back to America or England or anywhere, Belgium for college, you must get to Israel every year. You have to get to this country every year for that energy boost. Because if I was to take a study of kids who went to Yeshiva for a year and never get back here, I guarantee you, the ones who haven't visited in 6 or 7 years are much less likely to come, and they're much more likely to get stuck, and they're much more likely to allow the news and the media to color their perception to think it's too difficult to come. So get here every year. Okay? Next January, Alumni Month.
Something very similar. And I guess I'm agreeing now with Noam that support networks are just a huge deal. I'll share a little tidbit from my family. My mother made Aliyah when she was 17, alone from South Africa. She went to Hebrew U, and those years were terrible for her. She was alone. She had like 2 friends, but they got married and she didn't, and it was really, really rough for her. And when I speak to her, I was like, my Aliyah was so much easier than hers. because I was in a program, I had friends, I had a support network, I had people helping me, I'd missed the last bus for Shabbos somewhere, and like my neighbors would have me over for Shabbos meals. Like it was, I had people who I could rely on every step of the way, and just on a practical level, that made my experience of Aliyah super smooth. And so I highly recommend having people around you, making connections, putting down roots here, talking to the neighbors. It just makes everything easier.
Again, we'll shoot, but just three things. The first thing is essential. You make Aliyah, you have to have a sense of humor. If you don't have a sense of humor, then you're really going to struggle. The second thing is you need to have patience. I don't mean like savlanut, I mean like proper patience. Not everything is going to work out the way you want it to, the way it should, or the way it could. You just have to have that patience. It will get there. You know, like they say, yeah, but it will. It just takes longer. And the third thing is it's going to be hard. If you know it's going to be hard, and you anticipate, it's not going to be easy. You know, Eretz Yisrael niknet b'yisurim. When Chazal say that, the land of Israel coming here is acquired through Yisurim, that's what they mean. It's hard, it's difficult. Filling up your petrol, you know, going to the gas station, it's difficult. You've got to put it, it's not like, you've got to put your cards through, you've got to put your Tudat Zehut in, you've got to put, it's not, it shouldn't be that difficult, but it is. But that's okay, because Eretz Yisrael niknet b'yisurim. If you know that, and you know that at the end of it, it's valuable because it's so worth it, that just makes the journey easier.
I concur with my esteemed colleagues. I did not have the opportunity as you guys all did to make Aliyah. As I mentioned, I made it when I was 8, dragged here by my parents. And I really can't speak of my own experiences, but I will go with what you guys said. Thank you very much.
I'm going to tack on 4 items. Wife, kids, career, passion. Wife, spouse. And then we'll get to a few questions from the group. I think probably the most important thing for me was being married to somebody who was going to make Aliyah with or without me. I interpreted when I was dating anybody who said to me, I'm open to Aliyah, means we're going to talk about it, and then we're going to live in Teaneck next to her parents. So if you really want this, it's very, very hard when you make a decision to do something that is difficult. If you feel like you're dragging somebody else who's going to look at you and say, why did you bring me here? It's very, very hard. Having a life partner who is just as invested as you makes everything much easier. Number 2, kids. If you're coming at a time where you already have kids, so you're playing a game against time. The older kids get, the more challenging it is. Most people just say, if a kid's like up to 5 or 6, it's not going to really be a big deal. Once they get older than that, so you're pushing it. So consider timing in terms of like, well, how hard is this going to get? Career. So considering, as panelists have noted, you know, what it is that you're going to do for a living, is it can you educate yourself? You're not yet in college. So can you do something that will work for you? I got a very good piece of advice from a Rebbe of mine. He said, okay, great, you want to move to Israel and you want to be in chinuch, get yourself something that you could do on the side. So thank God I haven't needed it, but having a degree that I could do accounting or business finance on the side, I was looking for something that would be like part-time. You're not going to be a part-time neurosurgeon, but I could do your taxes. Right, that would be something to be supportive. The point is thinking about your career in terms of something that you could do here if that's of interest. And finally, passion. I think one of the biggest obstacles is that you forget. It's a little bit like when you turn on the car on a Saturday night, you start driving, and you're driving, and you realize you're like this. And then you turn on the defog, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, it's so much easier to see than I realized. I didn't realize how foggy the windshield was. I used to find that coming here, and as Rebbe said, like coming on a regular basis, I'd show up in Israel, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, clarity. Yes, I do want to be here. I do love this. Putting effort into, if this is where you want to be, putting effort into maintaining your passion, refreshing, keeping yourself in, because it's the slow creep of losing your sense of interest. It comes little by little, and it's very, very hard to see. Okay, we're going to take a few questions from, yes, Yishar, you're here first.
Mandate that tells us sneak onto a boat and swim on the land. So at what point is that actually ourselves convincing us, or the Jews talk about being true to ourselves, of after the door being opened and being closed?
So I guess my point is, it's really Judah's point that you have to be intellectually honest with yourself, right? The Gedolim of every generation dreamed sincerely to be here. And if it would have been possible, of course they would have been here. They were the greatest people ever. For you and me, I think, yeah, it's a real struggle. How much you really want it and it's just impossible, and how much you're kidding yourself because it's easier. I think it's useful if you find yourself in Chutz La'aretz. Anyone in this room, if you find yourself in Chutz La'aretz in a year from now, don't beat yourself up. You haven't failed. I think it's useful for looking at the past, not looking at the future. In the future, we should believe we have free will in every area, just psychologically. Why would you not want to think you have free will in an area? Obviously, you're shutting the door to something, like by definition. But when you're beating yourself up and you make yourself feel guilty about your past because you haven't lived up to your Rebbe or your dreams about what you could have done and should have done, just put that aside and say, maybe it was impossible. And now the door's open again. And just to believe that the future is open and the past, so to speak, you don't have to have this guilt that, I went to a Tzioni yeshiva and I haven't made Aliyah and I'm a terrible person now. No, maybe it was just impossible then. And now, whenever now is, now let's try to figure out a plan.
Just in the interest of historical accuracy, I've never actually been in the position of being Rav Bini speaking for Rav Bini. Very excited about that. But I think what Rav Bini meant was not literally they died on the way here. It meant that they died before they were able to get here. Chav Chaim died in Shul and Kippur in the morning in Groton, but he had a plan that didn't materialize because of circumstances. And the Vilna Gaon actually tried to set out on the road, and things prevented it, and he turned back, but he died in Vilna. So.
Rebbe, how does the Rebbe view advocacy? How does the Rebbe view advocacy in Chutz La'aretz, the importance of that, the role of that in today's politics, or how you have lots of leaders around here on this Yeshiva Baruch Hashem? How do you guys view that?
Advocacy is very important. It doesn't replace Aliyah. In other words, some people have said to me, well, if we're not in America, if we're not American Jews, who's going to be having influence in the White House and the politicians? So we have to be in America. With all due respect, if every single Jew would make Aliyah, we wouldn't need that advocacy. Because if we had every Jew making Aliyah, if Yudav Shomron was full of Jews, there would not be a question of Palestinian state. It wouldn't be a question of politics. Shum davar lo haya. So we would not need that advocacy. So if you're saying you're in America, you want to advocate? Because advocate. I appreciate it. I'm sure we all appreciate it. But are you going to tell me that it replaces Aliyah? I need to in America so I could be on the APAC. This is APAC, right? Right? No, that's ridiculous. Much more important to be here. We won't need APAC. Close down APAC. Come over here. Shalom Aleichem.
No one will be founding the local chapter of IPAC. And you can.
If you're the Army hasn't really come up so much, I know a lot of them are being very strong in feelings about Marine and drafting, but honestly,
That is a whole other panel.
with the permission of our esteemed teachers. It's kind of 2.5 questions.
Pick your one favorite.
I'm waiting to hear what half the question is. You have to
Welcome to my shir.
Remember what we said at the beginning of the year about introductions?
What's one unanticipated boon, and then one unanticipated difficulty, and how is that difficulty either circumnavigated or overcome?
Ooh, that's a good question. It is too fast. One unanticipated boon, if you make Aliyah when you're single, is you'll get to meet your wife, and she'll probably want to be in Israel. That's number one. One unanticipated difficulty, that's why it's unanticipated.
I was wondering, for people thinking about Aliyah and looking at what type of community they think they would want to be a part of in Israel, like specific areas to be, what would recommendations be for kind of how to figure that out?
What's the question?
How to figure what out?
What's the question?
Oh, where to live.
What community?
Oh.
Birshut. I know that the Rosh Yeshiva wants to answer this as
That's
well.
still an introduction. Okay.
Still an introduction. Just that is a very significant consideration. Going to the wrong place under the wrong circumstances can be the onset of failure of an attempt to make Aliyah. So chinuch, or you can have results that are really not good. So a person who's coming from an Anglo background needs to make sure that they've got some type of network around them, some type of system and people around them that think, speak, and understand their culture and their norms. It doesn't mean that you need to go always to a place where they only speak English. Like if you move, I don't know, move to Efrat. So in Efrat, you could get along without any Hebrew. You know, pretty much. You could manage. There are places, if you move to, I don't know, in Yerushalayim, certain neighborhoods, you can move to Hanof. Hanof, my parents live in Hanof. You know,
Move to
my
Dimona,
mother,
you won't find
you
English.
don't really need to speak Hebrew in Hanof. You can manage. You can manage without it. But if you move to certain neighborhoods in Be'er Sheva or in Haifa, or you know, certain yeshuvim, you might be able to use your English, but you need to speak Hebrew, and you need to be a part of that culture and a part of that life. So making a decision where that's going to be, what the educational systems are like, where the what kind of backdrop that's Torani that understands you and caters to you and to your needs is very important in order to be able to succeed in Aliyah.
I would just add, right now, that question is fundamentally different, sort of where to find the right community for yourself, whether you're married or single. Because obviously if you're married, you got to consult your partner. Like, I wanted to live in the Gush, so we came and spent Shabbatot because I wanted her to live in the Gush. And if she wouldn't have wanted to live in the Gush, I wouldn't be living in the Gush, right? Number one. Number two is, in the process of trying to find the right place, if you're single, just go to different places for Shabbatot. And when you decide to make that decision, that's grammatically correct, reach out to us, because we'll put you in touch with Orayta alumni in a variety of places, and they can welcome you. You can get a sense of the communities that are there. But that's way down the road, I think.
So I think we're going to wrap this up for right now. There's obviously more conversation that can be had. I want to thank all the panelists.